say in the next 3 days, what happens on Thursday, what happens in the next 4 days up until Tuesday when the 60 days as prescribed by the Supreme Court for us to hold a repeat presidential election expires, what happens after that to Kenya? There's a headline on page 4 of the Daily Nation. Observers cite threat to poll in 4 counties. And this is the African Electoral Observation Group has listed 4 counties. It says pose the greatest threat to the repeat presidential election slated for Thursday. And this is listed Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori and Siaya as areas where the election may not take place due to the attacks recently meted out on IEBC officials conducting training in the regions without even saying who's wrong, who's right. Fine. What if the elections do not take place in those 4 counties? I mentioned the fact that even today's meeting between IEBC and security operators could look at the possibility of postponing the process in a few areas which are considered troublesome. But what does that mean, therefore? That we'll hold an election on the voting process in some parts of the country come Thursday, then postpone some maybe till a week later, which will be beyond the 60 days. What does this mean?
Freddie, I think first of all that's just playing into the NASA agenda. In fact, when we say when somebody alludes to the fact that the elections won't be credible, perhaps they won't be credible because some people who want to vote will not be given the opportunity because they're trying to cause mayhem in certain hot areas. I mean, Akombe mentioned those same zones, and I think that it's incumbent, it's in fact imperative that our security agencies are there, that every single polling station in this country is open, is accessible. And, you know, I'd actually like to call on my NASA friends to my right we keep on talking about peace, to really put Kenya first. Just because you as an individual have opted not to vote, then don't deny or orchestrate a whole scenario where you're depriving somebody else, even a Nazarite, because there are some people in NASA who want to vote.
But what if they actually do manage to block the process in some parts? Does it present a problem that yes, if at all Kisumu is not able to hold the elections, then as prescribed by the Constitution, this particular process will not have taken place in all the 290 constituencies? That is one thing. On one hand, because of what is happening. On the other hand, IEBC postponing the process in some parts of the country because of security, which they're not certain that even after a week the security situation will have improved. Doesn't that present another problem and probably a constitutional crisis?
No, it can be a constitutional crisis. Actually, such an occurrence is actually taken care of in our electoral laws, whereby they can postpone elections in several areas that are deemed probably hostile or something drastic happens. You saw in August 8th the issues in Turkana, and you know very well what the laws of the election says, that the polling station is open at 6 and closes at about 5. But in Turkana, because of the rains and what have you, it went on until the wee hours of the morning. So those are some of the things that are foreseen that could happen. And we cannot follow robotic instructions when it comes to getting material, papers or voting material rather, in places where there is something drastic that is taking place. When you're sending your people into harm's way, and people are actually afraid, you know very well that they will not carry their duties as prescribed. So the onus is on you to protect lives. So if you find a situation that is very hostile, just like Dr. Akombe had said, there are areas, these 4 counties have actually proved very hostile when you are taking or to go and train our people there. And it is the duty of the government to provide security and ensure that everybody is given that accord to go and cast their vote. So if that does not happen, then there is going to be an issue, and the Electoral Commission can look at these things and they can liaise with the security apparatus and realize, hang on a minute, if we do this, then there is going to be a very hostile environment. Can we, for the time being, just hold, or move this date a little bit further? And probably when the situation calms,
doesn't that prolong the whole process? Because how do we continue counting?
It will, but you see, this is the price of our instrument. People who have said this will not take place. What do you do when they have a crazy, near occultic following? Right? What will you do? Doesn't matter what the Constitution says. Do you know, by the way, Fred, I can, as a leader, I was a governor somewhere, do you know I can rally people up, like we saw in these counties, to say this exercise will not take place? It is against the law, and they know it. So they're like, what is the government supposed to do? What are the security apparatus? And now probably this is where you'll start seeing what everybody is talking about, peace, peace, peace. This is where now we're like, hang on a minute, can we talk about this situation? Yes. I do not see any breakthrough in those 4 areas at this point, because these are people who've been told this cannot take place.
The outcome of this election can be considered legitimate if at all those 4 areas do not take part in the process?
It will, in this sense. You cannot deliberately, the law is there, you cannot deliberately move to say an election will not take place just because you have set up an umbrella of confusion, or
but that's looking at it if you decide to blame NASA. But beyond NASA, if the country if a Kuru or court, who is also a presidential candidate, goes to court, forget about NASA, actually moves to court and says elections do not take place in these 4 counties,
and that's why I'm saying
this result cannot be considered legitimate.
If you look at the constitution and look at our electoral laws, that particular element, what we are talking about, is actually captured. And you know why I would actually not point us thinking that way? Because, Fred, if we take that and stigmatize that and actually engrave it in our minds, I tell you what, here and now, you will have areas where elections will never take place in the future. Yes. Because when you feel like, you know what, I cannot win this election, or I'm several points down, you will never allow. And guess what? It will get out from the presidential candidates, it will go to governors, it will go to senators, and to even MCAs. They will not be allowing elections to be carried
seems to be counting on that fact that yes, because they've called for more demonstrations Tuesday, Wednesday, and even probably on election day to ensure that some of those areas this process does not take place. Is it strategic? Do you think it will actually work by prolonging this process and ensuring that yes, come election day, 26th of October, at the end of it, Kisumu, Siaya, Homa Bay and Migori, no election took place?
I think we are deliberately interpreting NASA's actions and statements to suit our own positions. First of all, when I listen to my brother and sister, they choose to quote Akombe on the 10% that she talked against NASA. The 90% that she talked both against the IEBC and their partners, Jubilee, they don't want to quote. Akombe is only right when he talked against NASA. Please quote Akombe in every other thing that she said. But leaving that, going back to what you are asking, NASA is talking about there will be no election. NASA is not talking about we will not go to it. There will be no to be election, because a nullified election is as good like one that did not take place. Today we are talking like there was no election on 8th of August because it was nullified. Null and void did not exist. So when NASA says there will be no election, they mean whatever we are purporting to call elections is not one by the laws of Kenya. But let's also go back to where my friend suggests that we can postpone the election in the 4 counties in Luo Nyanza and continue with the rest. What irredeemable, what irreparable damage will happen if we postpone all elections and do it one day at a time? Instead of splitting Kenya into some pieces don't belong to Kenya, they can wait, they will have their elections one day. If you divide a nation, you most likely will be unable to govern it. We think that we have the forces behind us, we have a large chunk of our people behind us, so we can trample on the rights of other people. Let us unite Kenya and have one Kenya so that we can govern one Kenya.
But don't you think it will be foolhardy for the IEBC to push on with having this process on the 26th of October in Kisumu, given what happened last week with the training of IBC officers, in Siaya, in Migori, in Homa Bay, that they understand the current security situation, it cannot happen, that they have been forced by circumstances and by these demonstrations that are happening, that process cannot take place in those areas?
It will take place. In fact, I remember when I listened to Raila Odinga the last time he spoke publicly, he asked his supporters not to interfere with both IEBC and anybody else they think does not support NASA. I remember that very well. And I don't think there is anybody, the electorate in that end of the country, listen to more than Raila Odinga. So I think there will be election if they want it to be. But that election that will be there is the very one that NASA has described as a null and void election.
NASA is not, they're questioning the legitimacy and the credibility of that process, but will not go out to
They will not interfere with IEBC or anybody else who wants to go and vote there. That is not, but whatever will come out of that process is a nullity.
Okay. Bonadan Manzo, yes, on this issue of postponing elections in some parts, does it present any kind of crisis? Does it present any kind of problem, given that if at all 4 counties, which are considered a stronghold of NASA, do not take part in this election? Will we have to wait for them, and for how long? Because if it is to do with security, it is doubtful that the security situation could improve in a week's time or in 2 weeks' time. Don't you think we're just prolonging a problem by even postponing an election in 1 county only?
First of all, it is not possible to postpone an election beyond the 60 days, especially this particular election. And even if you are to postpone for a day, then it means you have postponed for eternity, because the situation will never change. Up to the day there will be dialogue. The beauty about the dialogue is that there are many things you agree by consent, and even if you are to send your lawyers to court, they will have agreed issues, and the matter will become easier. And that's why dialogue is very important. It is not just in those particular counties. There are very many other counties that the people know that this process is flawed. The election is about the process, and they will not participate in the election, and in fact it will not take place. You are not thinking of a situation whereby even the electoral officials do not show up that day. Suppose they don't. You are also not thinking of a situation whereby the process has to be right, it has to be legal. In fact, according to the Constitution, if election does not take place in 290 constituencies, there is no presidential election. So before people just jump, and this is why I have said it is important, whether they dismiss it or not, dialogue is the only way forward. Any other thing is not applicable, whether by law or by the people, because you also cannot use security forces. You cannot use force. If you decide to use force, how many guns will you use? How many bullets will you use? The people can defeat the armies. There's a talk that they are using the army.
Don't you think it's high time that Ofula Chebukati actually moves to court and presents all these problems to the Supreme Court and says, how do we go on from here? And because surely he is caught between a rock and a hard place. How does he move on with this process?
Well, Freddie, let me start here. My friend Owidi there said that we are very selective in analyzing what Akombe said, because she, of course, just like Chebukati, used the word credibility. I think we also need to remember that the other day she was on an interview with on Jeff Koinange Live, and she categorically stated that the outcome of the August 8th election was good, was credible, and that the outcome reflected the will of the people. When we talk about dialogue, and this is a conversation that I even find unfortunate. What is it that we're dialoguing about? NASA wanted the Supreme Court, took Jubilee to court, disputed the outcome. It is upon them to then respect the ruling of the court. If you listen very carefully to what my brother Mheshimiwa Manzo said, there is a very clear plan to hijack and to sabotage this election. He asked the question, what would happen if none of the ROs and POs showed up at the polls? You know, what would happen if IBC didn't show up to work, essentially?
Yes, what would happen?
Okay. Well, clearly there would be a crisis. But the question is why?
And don't you think
why
the situation currently, they've already precipitated that crisis, that it's going to happen that way, that probably come election day, some areas, some election officials will not show up. At the end of the day, do you think we'll have that election?
And this is why we were trying to amend the act, because there should be consequences. I mean, you cannot have a job that is so important to this nation and then simply decide on that material day that you're ill or won't go to work. If you really can't put the country first in this case, then you have no reason whatsoever to even be working for the IBC.
So the hope probably is to criminalize any acts that may stop elections in the election process in any area. Any kind of interference, whether from NASA, whether instigated through the electoral officials, but that law is yet to be signed. What is Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, waiting for? This amendment bill was already presented to him last week. If at all, the hope is to ensure that there's anyone who dares interfere with this process has criminal liability. Therefore, the process will be declared at least legitimate to that point. He should have signed that law by now.
You see, Fred, to just actually amplify what you just said, and the irreducible minimums that NASA had brought, and the amendment laws that had been passed, they were fortifying the process. And what they were doing, they were removing the huge chunk of responsibility from the chairman to bring it to the individuals, criminalizing the aspect of you can swear an affidavit and then go to the polling station and do your own crazy things, and thereby bungling an entire election. Exactly. So if you look, I mean, we, like Honorable Dan is talking about, the issues of dialogue, and people can defeat the armies. We cannot operate outside the parentheses of the law. He is a member of parliament. He should know this very well. Section 73 of the Elections Act is the one that gives to Bukati. So Bukati goes to the Supreme Court, he'll be told, that's like what Maraga told him. Do you understand the law? Go and read that law, the electoral laws that you wrote. And they are very clear. Section 73 of the elections laws, the Electoral Commission can postpone an election in areas it believes there are serious breach of peace on the polling date. So which means, back to what I told you, these instances have actually been factored in. So you're going to the Supreme Court to present what? That all other counties, 40-something counties, will vote. Only these 3 will bang on election. It is actually captured in your electoral laws. Go and do that which is captured there. I am not against people talking. I'm not against dialogue. But what is this dialogue all about?
Yet postponement of this of elections in any part of this country could present a potential problem as well.
Yes.
Because now we do not know when else they can be held.
And that's what I'm saying. First of all, we look at that particular law. Can we strengthen it? Can we fortify it? Yes, we can. If we go through those dynamics, yes, if we go out of those dynamics and ensure totally this cannot happen, then Chebukati would have something to take to the Supreme Court and say, look, I have tried, because I mean, you have POs and POs and arrows who have said, I do not want to be in anywhere. I mean, I don't want to be anywhere in those counties because I fear for my life, and justifiably so because of what we saw. All right. So people have actually legitimate concerns that this area is not going to be peaceful. Albeit the fact that yes, Honorable Raila Odinga has come and said we will not interfere. And by the way, it is written on the prescription of law. If you do not want to vote, you have a right. Don't show up. If you want to vote, allow that person to vote. Whether they'll vote for whatever, whether they'll go and spoil the ballot, they have a constitutional right. Don't interfere with them. And that's why it is going to be very hard. If the prevalence of peace suffices, it is going to be very hard for somebody to say there will not be a vote cast in all those counties. It will be wrong. The minute IBC opens, and they should, because they are given a constitutional mandate and a constitutional right, and more than that, a directive from the Supreme Court. If they open shop, then people must be allowed to go.
You can say something. The application of Section 73. If you want to postpone, suppose now you are postponing then over 25% or over 25 counties. Do you have an election? If that is applicable and that's what Chebukati is going to use, then you will remain with a few counties in Central and the Rift Valley. The rest of the counties, then you will have to apply that particular section. The problem we are having is not exactly a legal problem. It's a political problem. And political problems call for political solutions, not threats of the police, security apparatus, the army. It will not work. It is dialogue at the end of the day which will give us the proper law.
Fred, do you know why I hate political? Do you know why I hate political solutions? Sorry to cut you short. Do you know why I hate political solutions? They are the ones that got us here.
Correct.
Do you remember something they came up with in Parliament through the Orengo and the Keraito-led commission, where they said we have something called a legal political bypass to get the Hassan-led commission out of office? Tell you what, Fred, it's why we are here.
And that's why we should not go.
That is why
we would have ended up here anyway, because Jubilee has this bad manners of compromising the IEBC. Please keep quiet now.
This is not an issue of Jubilee or NASA.
No. Let's listen. Akombe said that IEBC is under duress. They are under siege.
From
and that you choose, that one you choose to ignore. And then you tell us Akombe sat in Jeff Koinange live and said this and that, and the election on 8th of August was fair and fair. She was under siege. She needed room to be let to escape.
She said that from outside the country.
Let me tell you.
She's already in asylum.
Please.
She said it on the phone.
Please wait.
What siege?
I have 5 where I've only spoken one and you're already cutting
okay, go ahead.
So trying to tell us that we are amending the constitution, the law to fortify the election. Where is that law today when we are running, cutting things from 14 to 1 so that we have it in time? The election commission should be preparing for this election, knowing under which laws. When some laws are still lying in some drawer somewhere, being used as a trickery to trick the country into getting into some corner. Also, we need to understand, and this everybody must know, the only reason why Jubilee is insisting this election must take place on 26th October is because they had prepared their rigging plan with 2 candidates, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, and 8 candidates, all the original 4. In the event that this thing is pushed to another date, it means we'll have fresh nominations and the candidates will now be different, the number may change, and their plan and prepared results will not work.
I have a question for you because
yes.
You said that Raila Odinga, the NASA leader, has told his supporters not to interfere with the process on October 26th. But that is not a guarantee because he, on the other hand, has called for demos to ensure there's no election on Thursday.
Correct.
He has called for demos tomorrow and on Wednesday. They could spill over to Thursday as well. If at all these amendments are passed to the electoral offences are passed are assented to by the president, it criminalizes anything that you do in terms of interfering with the process. Don't you think because Raila Odinga is still a candidate on that ballot paper, as far as we are concerned, he will be on the ballot paper. If I go to vote, he'll be there and I could actually vote for him if at all he is my candidate of choice. Yes, there's a possibility. Don't you think that if the supporters of NASA and Raila Odinga do anything on October 26th that will prevent an election from taking place in any polling station in Kisumu, Migori, Siaya, or Homa Bay, that NASA and that their candidate could be held criminally liable, and that could actually disadvantage them, even in terms of pushing for any other process?
Let me tell you, number one, are you asking Raila Odinga to act anticipating that a law could be introduced in Kenyan system? If the law is there, he will act according to that law. If the law is still not there, is it still in somebody's drawer, let it be there.
Although even
when it becomes
with the process right now, it's still criminal. It's only the penalties that are changing.
Nobody's interfering with the process. Raila Odinga is not going to go to the streets. So I think he's safe wherever he is. If anybody misinterprets his statement that there will be no election and goes to the street to stop the election, that is his problem. The law can deal with him individually. There is nothing wrong with going into the streets, because as you are in the streets, people could be voting. Only those who don't want to vote will go into the streets, or those who have voted, because we are not going to demonstrate at the polling stations. The people who are going to demo, the people who are going to be in the streets, they are going to be purely on the streets. There are no elections that are going to take place in the streets. I think we are trying to bring imaginations into these things. Let's be clear.
Don't you think NASA should be blamed if at all any of their supporters block any process anywhere? Because the call for the demonstrations are coming from the leadership. It's not individuals down there. It's not the supporters who come up out of their own volition to say let's go to the streets. The call comes from the top.
Absolutely. I mean, he's the commander. He's their general. He's the person giving very explicit directions. I think, you know, him coming on TV, saying the other day, you know, oh, there's no interference, let's not vandalize stores, you know, Kikuyus are like our brothers, let's take care of them. I think honestly that's just playing to the gallery, it's singing to the gallery. Nobody believes that, because behind the scenes he's literally hoodwinking his puppets. Why is it that out of all the counties that we have in this country, there's only 4, and they happen to be in the Nassau zone, that are extremely hostile? Clearly they're receiving instructions from somewhere. It isn't mandatory that any one of these candidates is on the ballot. Uhuru Kenyatta is there because he has asked for the people's votes, just like Tita, just like everybody else. Raila Odinga wants to have dialogue now. We have been having dialogue for so long. You know, you wanted the commission dismantled, so fine, it was reconfigured. Then you wanted the technology replaced. That was done. At what point does this dialogue stop? At what point do we listen to the will of the people of Kenya?
Okay. Fred, I need legal advice on this because they say equity, I think legally, this thing about equity, you cannot come with dirty hands.
Yes, he who goes to equity must go with clean hands. And you know you cannot be a benefit of your own mischief.
Exactly. So how does Raila Odinga remedy that? Because it will begin that his supporters are using his word, his call for demos to actually stop this process. How can he remedy that? He still has 72 hours. How can he avoid being blamed for there being no election in these 4 counties?
You know, legal action against someone or a criminal liability is personal. That's why, despite a lot of deaths and violence in 2007, Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto walked out of The Hague. So you know, you must take the right person to be prosecuted. We are even aware that the ICC is around and there are complaints by Jubilee to the ICC against NASA. That does not cure any of the political activities happening here. First, as to the date when Raila Odinga abandoned the race, up to that evening, there was no candidate, whether him or Uhuru Kenyatta, and there was no election. The act of the court the next day by the Matiba judgment had already been overtaken by events, among other activities. So the public have already walked with this, and the public are aware that so far the process is flawed. The only person who is not aware is President Uhuru Kenyatta, and he has misled a lot of other people that the country now can pretend there is going to be an election. The truth of the matter is you cannot use the security forces, which is what he wants to use, to conduct an election. An election is an affair which is conducted in a free environment by IBC officials. You cannot criminalize the last minute, you know, or change of the law which he can sign the last minute. Remember, this law was brought in a hurry, so why, and with his instructions, why has he not now signed that law? So that would have challenged it in court, because that law is a nullity. Even if you prosecuted somebody with that law, I'll go to court and I'll move a constitutional reference, and it will be interpreted that that law is a nullity. So that law cannot help him. There is no, every poll official has an individual responsibility. If they don't feel it is right for them to go and work for a reduced fee, and in fact which a lot of times they are never paid because the budget was reduced. So any poll official who feels not to attend to any polling that day, you can't stop them. And if there is no poll official, there is no election. Because the Bukati personally cannot go into every polling station to conduct election. The truth of the matter is, right now there is no proper preparation, the process is flawed. Whatever happens on 26 is illegal, is illegitimate, and it's null and void. And President Uhuru knows that, and he's encouraging the country to go and...
No, to be fair on both sides, I think we actually hoodwinking Kenyans every time we say, you know, President Uhuru. There was a directive, and everybody will agree. President Uhuru did not order fresh election. Let's be fair to that person. He did not order fresh election. It was ordered by the Maraga-led Supreme Court. Right? When he was told this is the date, in fact it was on the 17th, it was moved. All he has done is, okay, I did not like the verdict. I was mad, you know, he threw his tantrums, but he went back to the date that was set. So he did not order. So when somebody comes and says, oh, this is, you know, Uhuru's election, no, he's just following a directive. The IBC are the people who we should be questioning, we should be putting or posing these questions to. Are you ready? Are you ready? Even before Akombe left, she was the one who went to the areas that we were talking about, and she wrote a report. And not only that report, she wrote so many other things, and she has spoken about them while abroad. And as much as we would not want to agree with Akombe, she has raised issues that are actually poses quite a lot of concern. She has said, we have tried working with the justice system. We have lost almost all the cases that we've presented in the justice system, which is a fact. We have tried bringing sanity in some of these areas. I have tried working with POs and ROs, which is quite true. The August 8th election was credible, and actually it was the will of the people. She has written that. Her life is in danger. Probably yes. And I do not want to pigeonhole on half of the things that she said, but she could be right. So as we sit here and say this election is not credible, we are talking about engaging that person who will ensure that they have signed that form that had issues. And only this time, the major problem that people are talking about was the text. What I have said now, and Fred, this is a very simple process that we want to take out of context. It is as simple as they come. Same way you scan a document and send it to somebody. As a matter of fact, we do not need, if I was asked, we need that sophistication that we are talking about. It is a very simple process. Take a picture, send it. If we can have a country that can run and conduct an election using bubbles, let me tell you, we can actually exercise the credibility in this process and have a credible election.
We're just about to take a break, but before that, one more word from Munde.
Yeah, thank you, Freddie. I just happened to find the section in the Election Offences Act that deals with culpability on Raila Odinga's part. In Section 11, it says a person who directly or indirectly, and I think that's the operative word here, in person or through any person on their behalf inflicts or threatens to inflict injury, damage, harm, whatever, and then it goes on to say, in order to induce or compel that person to vote in a particular way, or, most importantly, refrain from voting, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 2 million shillings or an imprisonment term not exceeding 6 years or both. Directly or indirectly. We're seeing this man, we're hearing, I mean, he's not even hiding it. So, and he's not above the law. I mean, he is not above the law. So he is responsible for any violence that may occur in those areas.
I think it would be fair if you put Raila Odinga on what he said.
We have been, the whole country
has been listening. Direct or indirect?
The whole country has been listening. Why would the law not be applicable?
It's not.
Why would you section certain segments of the Constitution that are applicable and some that are not? This is the law. But to address something else that Honorable Manza raised about the IBC officials not being properly compensated. Let's remember that these are jobs they applied for. They're very well aware of the pay scales, the remuneration that's being offered. If they also wanted between the last election and this election to put a notice and quit, they could have done that. They're there because they want to. The IBC is prepared. It's even sending out text messages today about the elections coming up. They are ready to report to duty. I would just hope, again, that in those sections, then you would encourage all your people, instead of now trying to pollute the rest of the country not to vote, you'd be encouraging them to hit the ballot.
Time for a break, and when we come back, for the very first time, the Chief of Defense Forces has spoken about this election and about what is happening in the country to do with Kenyan politics. Chief of Defense Forces Samson Mwaveve has asked politicians to avoid talks that will divide the country ahead of Thursday's presidential election. We'll be looking at that. Have you ever heard the Chief of Defense Forces speaking about Kenyan politics? This, we're definitely